Good afternoon, everybody. This is indeed a joyful day where we honor the achievements of our dedicated officials in the sport that we all love, track and field, known simply worldwide as athletics. The officials we honor today have dedicated much of their lives in honoring our sport, and I want to thank you all for being here today to give them their due tribute. Unfortunately, I have some sad news to give you today as well. Yesterday, we lost one of our officials, Jai Singe, who died of complications from pancreatic cancer. Jai was a gentle giant and a rare gem as a kind human being. He will be sorely missed from our track and field community. So let's take a moment to have a moment of silence in his honor. Jai, rest in peace, my friend. Now, this 2020 class of our Officials Hall of Fame is now our third class of inductees. You can see our entire Hall of Fame by viewing it on the United States Track and Field New York website, which is newyork.usatf.org/officialshof. I know some of you are going to be itching to watch the TV football game, and there's a track meet from Arkansas right on. So while I'm not going to rush anything, I am going to get started. Okay. And our first inductee into this year's Hall of Fame is Margaret Cornelius. Margaret Cornelius was born September 1st, 1939 in Winkel, New Amsterdam, Guyana. She married Lloyd Cornelius in 1968, and eventually migrated to Brooklyn, New York, and had two children, Lloyd Jr. and Leanne. She started officiating track meets in the 1980s for the then Metropolitan Association. Her daughter Leanne ran for the well-renowned Zodiacs Track Club that originated in the Bronx, but later expanded to have a Brooklyn chapter as well. Many of the mothers of the Zodiac Track Club were working enthusiastically and dutifully in an effort to assist their children and the children in New York City. Margaret worked judging and timing on the finish line long before the advent of the high-tech photo finish equipment we are using right now. All judging was by eyeball, and all timing was by hand. The Metropolitan Athletics Congress had some very skilled folks to train her as well. What they did not have to train her for was her being a quiet but strong. United Nations came in quite handy when working with large groups that had to staff the finish line. Try negotiating with close to 10 people, all with different times on their watches to get a consensus of the timing results. That was the nature of working the finish line in the 80s and 90s. Imagine then trying to coordinate the results with Irv Black's Omega photo timing system, where they literally had to develop the film on the site to help determine the order of finish. For you young kids out there, develop real film, not the digital image that we have instantly today. More than most times, Margaret's team, visual judging, was in agreement with the photo results that were recorded as official places in the finished results. She was also able to recruit an entire generation of finish line officials in the New York City area, including her son, Lloyd Jr., to be the most reliable group of workers at any track meet that we held. Margaret worked countless local and regional youth and open and masters meets on the finish line, culminating with her selection to work the 2000 Olympic trials in Sacramento, California. After moving to Georgia, Margaret continued to work ACC and SEC college conference meets until her passing in 2018. Her legacy of working with some of the greatest officials in the history of New York Association will not be forgotten. Margaret Cornelius was a parent to her children, an extended parent to the kids of the Zodiac's Track Club, and a mentor partner with every official she came into contact during her time here in the New York Association. We proudly induct into our Hall of Fame, Margaret Cornelius.
Congratulations, Margaret.
Nice job.
Now, we have with us Leanne Cornelius, Margaret's daughter.
Hey, hey everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I first like to apologize. Where I am, I'm unable to take off this mask. So, but on behalf of my family, Lloyd Sr., Lloyd Jr., who you know, myself, we definitely would like to extend our extreme gratitude to you guys for acknowledging my mom. She loved the sport of track and field, but more than the sport of track and field, she loved the people that she worked with. And I accredit that to you guys because she wouldn't be who she is. She started off again as just a mom. And after being a mom, she was a regular, just a volunteer official. And then she became who you known her to be, and just perfect at everything. And so we definitely appreciate that. And we thank you definitely for this 2020 induction of her, into the Hall of Fame. We wish everyone's success, and I'm sure she's looking down and expressing her same gratitude the same way, and still smiling and still wanting to be perfect where she is. So again, we thank you.
We thank you.
Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you.
Now for our second inductee to this year's Hall of Fame, Johnny Gibson. In February of 1977, I was a 29-year-old kid invited to officiate my second national championship event, the USA Indoor Meet at Madison Square Garden. The meet director, Helio Rico, had asked me to join the clerking team. And I remember having to take a day off of my job to do this. Had to be there at 8:45 in the morning to meet with the chief clerk of the course, John Gibson. Since I was only a neophyte with this crew, John immediately began to give me a graduate level course on clerking process, especially at a national championship, and even more so, how to do it in Madison Square Garden on its crazy 11-lap track where lines were all over the place. Understand, there were no computers involved in clerking then. There were entry lists of qualifiers who had to formally declare their entry in an event and fill out an entry card. They collected the cards, and you had to be in by a certain deadline, and then they were brought to a seating table where the cards were used to form qualifying heats, which were then typed up on sheets for use by the finish line, the announcers, the press stewards, anybody who needed to know. And once those heats were finalized, the athletes were called in, given your heat and lane assignments, and brought out to the track by a human being, a line clerk. Well, I shadowed Johnny Gibson all through the morning, and he drilled me on what I had learned and asked me questions to make sure that I had learned it. And then I understood what the heck was going on in this facility. At 11 o'clock, he took me on a so-called coffee break where we dragged our coffee and we went out on the track to the spots where I was going to be delivering people on relay exchanges. He had already given me an assignment to help him with the high hurdles and help Warren Ring with the mile. But he says, you're going to be doing all the relays and you're going to be the guy in charge of the second leg. So he brought me to the second leg spot and told me the instructions I had to give to the athletes. And he said, say them back to me twice. So I did. He says, I think you got it. And then he gave me a system of signals for lap counting on each of these things and where to hold it and who to point it at as I was doing it. And what I was going to do with the program that I had in my hand, because that was part of the signal as well. The last lap, you had to put your program up in the air. He had me do that 3 times to make sure I understood how that was done. And then with a gentle tap on the shoulder, he says, I think you've got it. I think you're going to be okay. You're ready to go to work. So it was the beginning of a great experience of working for him that lasted for over 20 years. Worked with him, worked for him, a few other things. Johnny Gibson, although he was born in New York City, he was a New Jersey guy through and through. Bloomfield, New Jersey, to be exact, where he excelled as track man at Bloomfield High from the age of 13 when he ran his first race. After graduating from high school, He literally got a job literally running messages on Wall Street back and forth while attending Fordham University at night. He was able to join the track team, and the running he did at work helped him with his training. And he hurdled park benches as part of it. He became a formidable 440-yard hurdle man to the degree that he won the college 400-meter hurdles at the 1927 Penn Relays in 55.2 seconds, beating late Lord David Burleigh of Great Britain, who at the time was the best in the world. After the race, some coaches tried to have Gibson disqualified because he was a night student. Lord Burleigh would have nothing of that. He said Gibson had won and beaten him fairly, and he would never accept the first place medal under any circumstances, so the matter was dropped on the spot. Later that summer, this 1927, on July 2nd, Lord Burleigh broke the world record for 440-yard hurdles at a meet in England. The very same day, out in Lincoln, Nebraska, Johnny Gibson ran the 400-meter hurdles at the U.S. National Championships in Lincoln, Nebraska, and broke Burleigh's world record set earlier in the day by running 52.6 seconds. And when you get the metric conversion, it was a lot faster than what Burleigh had run. Johnny made the U.S. Olympic team in 1928 in the Amsterdam Games. Unfortunately, only 6 men went to the final in those days, and he was eliminated after the semifinals. Guess who won the gold medal? David Burleigh of Great Britain, tying the Olympic record at 53.4. So who knows what could have been. After retiring from racing at age 32, Johnny got into coaching. First, he was a freshman coach at Fordham, and after the war from 1945 to 1972, he was a head coach at Seton Hall University. While there, he had some very strong teams and a lot of fine athletes. Most notably, he was instrumental in the development of a world-class sprinter by the name of Andy Stanfield, who won 2 gold medals in the Helsinki Games and a silver in the Melbourne Games of 1956. While doing all this, Johnny was raising a family, but also finding the time to officiate. He was a chief clerk of the course at the Millrose Games for 50 years, as well as the U.S. Indoor Championships, both AAU and TAC, the IC4As, and the Penn Relays, and countless other events. Any meet held in the Garden was going to be run on time as long as Johnny Gibson was controlling the flow of that meet. And control it he did. Even if he was clerking a dual meet, he would only deliver the athletes to the starter 2 minutes before the start. He didn't want the early start. He didn't want the late start. He wanted it to start on time. In the early 1980s, when the Metropolitan Athletic Congress organized its officials, Johnny got one of his former Seton Hall athletes, Frank Bailey, to organize and train the group. He was also a founding member of the New Jersey Track and Field Officials Association, and he's been honored as a member of many halls of fame: Fordham University, Seton Hall University, the Helms Hall of Fame, the New Jersey Sports Authority, the Garden State Hall of Fame, and the Bloomfield Hall of Fame. Now, it might be late, but it's our great honor to have him join our own Metropolitan Officials Hall of Fame. In 2002, John was quoted by Frank Litsky in the New York Times as saying, "If you're a track man, you're a good man." His own words have said it all today about John A. Gibson. Congratulations, Johnny Gibson. And now, his family, his daughter, and Bernie Donegan, who many of you people are familiar with. Go ahead, Bernie, it's yours.
Okay, before we begin, I'd just like to compliment the colleagues that are getting this honor today: Neal and Gary and John, Tracy, and to the Cornelius family. Congratulations. And at this time, I'd like to introduce my wife, who has just a brief note to mention.
Okay. On behalf of his children, his grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren, I would like to thank the committee for recognizing the accomplishments and contributions to the field of track officiating by my father, John, AKA Johnny Gibson. I know he would have taken great pride in being inducted into the New York and Track and Field Officials Hall of Fame. He loved officiating at all levels of the sport, from high school meets to the prestigious Milrose. It was his opportunity to give back to the sport, which had given him so much. Particularly, he loved mentoring new generations of officials, including this guy next to me, who had the privilege of working and officiating with him for many years, and who has honored my dad's philosophy of passing it along. So again, on behalf of my family, many of whom are present here, I thank you for this very much appreciated honor.
And to close it out, I'd just like to read a letter to you. It says, "Dear Johnny, it's been a pleasure for me to send you the enclosed, for you very frankly, you and you only are responsible for the maintaining of the perfect time schedule, which is a talk of every track fan. Johnny, as a clerk, of course, you are just tops and far superior to anyone that has arrived in that capacity. I make this statement after having been associated with track and field for some 35 years or more. Not only do I appreciate what you have done for the success of our games, this is being the Milrose games, but you have the everlasting gratitude of our credentials." And this is signed by Fred Schmertz, Howard's father. This was dated, now get the date, this was dated February 13th, 1942. None of us, I was 6 months old at that time. So I happened to go through, we went through his scrapbook, and I couldn't pass up sharing this letter with you. And so that was John's legacy. Just a couple other things. You know, he fought for years with the Garden to try and get them to make that a 10-lap track. Could never fit it in. He fought with the Meadowlands when they built that track. And yes, they did put a 10-lap track in. John was so far ahead in his thinking with regard to athletics, it was unbelievable. If they were putting a new floor in, the powers to be from Meadowlands and from the Garden would come to see, what do you think about this surface or whatever. He was well liked. He was an ambassador for the State Department, taking teams to the Mideast and over different parts of the Caribbean and whatever. There are many athletes out there who I run into and said, hey, I remember when John did this. I remember when John did that. He's a legacy, and he was a great person. He's the one who got me to leave my starter's job into going into clerking. And 51 years later, it was a great honor. Thank you, John. Tom, back to you.
I just have to say one thing. John was a great mentor in terms of officiating, but I was also a coach, and I could pick his brain forever. He helped me so much in that regard as well. God bless you, John. All right, moving on. Our next inductee, Neal Johnson. One of our most stalwart officials over the last 30 years has been Mr. Neal Johnson. You could be at a youth meet, an open meet, a professional or collegiate meet locally, and chances are you would have encountered his strapping presence, dealing kindly and politely with athletes and coaches alike. A native of the Bronx, Neal got involved in sports at an early age and became an accomplished basketball player. He continued his athletic pursuits as a student at St. Bonaventure University up in Olean, New York. After college, he officiated basketball and other sports as well. But it was in 1974 when a turn in his life permanently involved him in a life in sports. A professional colleague and close personal friend of his, Herb Rosenblatt, invited him to help in starting a new initiative in the Bronx. That initiative was Bronx Special Olympics, which Herb was looking to create, a sports organization for children and adults with intellectual disabilities, which would become eventually the largest and most impactful sports organization in the world. This was a local genesis of the Special Olympics movement that was started in 1968 in Chicago by Eunice Kennedy Shriver. When Neal commits to anything, he gives it everything he has. He soon became an enthusiastic organizing volunteer and an advocate for Special Olympics athletes and programs throughout the state and the nation. He became totally involved in the culture of the organization and became fast friends with some of its early founders, such as Eunice Shriver and Rayford Johnson. He helped springboard the effort to continue hosting the Special Olympics World Games, both summer and winter, here in the United States. Since 1979, when the games were hosted in Brockport, New York, that has happened 11 times since then. It was during all this time that Neal got involved in becoming an active track and field official while keeping a business career and volunteering in all the Special Olympic events and fundraising activities as a member of the board of directors of Special Olympics New York. He worked many meets as a throws official, a clerk, and eventually became a fixture locally as a starter. In 1997, Neal was tasked by the board of Special Olympics New York with doing a search for a new president and chief executive officer. While he was inquiring of them just what they were looking for in a candidate, they pretty much stated, someone like you. And then they offered him the job. He willingly accepted, and Special Olympics became not an obsession, but a profession. Consequently, from 1997 through 2017, he served as the president and CEO of Special Olympics New York. It involved working during the week in Schenectady, New York, while traveling all around the state as well, and then commuting home to Kinnelon, New Jersey for the weekends. Something tells me Neal knew how to drive anywhere in New York State without having to use any GPS or road maps. It was not just the Special Olympics program he committed to. Indeed, he expanded their mission, encouraging the growth of unified sports throughout the schools in Central New York, Northern New York, and the Capital District. He helped this program to soar when he established a partnership with the New York Public High Schools Athletic Association to get unified sports as a mainstream activity. The program has grown to become a huge success over the last 10 years. You turn on the TV stations up there and you will get scores from unified games as well as you do varsity games. When Neal was back home on the weekends, he was always lending a hand to our local track meets as well as the national and international events for Special Olympics. He was an international starter for 3 Special Olympic World Games. He was recognized internationally for his experience and commitment to Special Olympics and was asked to lead both officiating and coaching clinics globally, including in China, Japan, Singapore, Ireland, Jamaica, Greece, Austria, and across the USA by Special Olympics Incorporated. Because of his strong resume, he began to apply for and got accepted to officiate at numerous USATF national events, both as a throws official and later as a starter. As an indication of his leadership abilities, he's been assigned as a chief starter at USATF indoor, outdoor, and under 20-year-old national championships. He's also served at several USATF indoor combined events championship as a starter and as the event coordinator. In addition, other national distinctions recognize Neal's career. In 2014, at the USATF National Convention, the National Officials Committee honored him with its John Davis Humanitarian of the Year Award. That same year, 2014, his alma mater, St. Bonaventure University, awarded him an honorary doctorate in tribute for his contributions to teaching through his service in the Special Olympics movement. In 2017, Neal retired from Special Olympics New York, ending a brilliant 20-year career. He came right back home to help us with his usual enthusiasm, and he was helping us in earnest before the COVID-19 lockdown. He cannot be with us today because of some temporary health issues, but we all know that Neal always bounces back like a Super Bowl whenever he gets the chance to. Neal, we congratulate you on this richly deserved honor and hope to see you back this season. God bless you, Neal.
Yeah, you're here.
Okay. Our next inductee, Tracy Sundlun. Tracy currently lives outside of San Diego in Santee, California. He's best known as the co-founder of the precedent-setting Rock and Roll Marathon series. But before that, there was New York and the Metropolitan Athletics Congress, now known as USA Track and Field New York. Both are major chapters of the life of the seasoned professional with over 40 years of involvement in virtually every facet of the sports of track and field, road racing, cross-country running, and race walking. His experience includes everything from coaching to sports administration, to event creation, to planning, production, officiating, to athlete representation, sponsoring sales, to charity fundraising, contract negotiation, to television production, event marketing, to government regulations, to budgeting and finance. Tracy is a visionary who's not afraid to take a chance on being great and has been at the forefront of a number of the sports innovations and advances over the past 40 years. A proven consensus builder and problem solver, he's a team player who understands that success has many parents and does not seek the limelight, but does not run from any responsibility. His actions, events, and programs have always epitomized his core belief that the sport should impact all of society, be greater than the sum of its parts, and only as strong as its weakest link, and look to include as opposed to exclude, involving all constituencies and athletes of all ages and abilities. What most of us can relate to warmly was Tracy's career here in New York from 1980 to 1997, when he volunteered and eventually commandeered the leadership and the energy of the Metropolitan Athletics Congress, the Metropolitan Association of the Athletics Congress of the USA, then later USA Track and Field. In 1980, he became on as a volunteer chair of the Women's Track and Field Committee. By 1982, he became MAC's first executive director and used the organization and his sheer energies as a vehicle to execute his vision for the sport here in the New York metropolitan area. MAC went from a clubhouse attitude to we can be the best in the business attitude very, very quickly. Herewith is a summary of what he accomplished in those 17 years before he headed west. Tracy was the first paid executive director of a TAC USATF association in the country. Tracy was intimately involved in the creation and or refurbishment of 13 area track and field and cross-country facilities. Under Tracy's leadership, the MAC became much more active in all aspects of the sport than any other regional association then or since. Tracy grew the MAC from a volunteer office of 1 to a full-time paid staff of 9, all reporting to him. Tracy also began payment for officials at MAC USATF conducted events and started the junior officials program where youngsters more interested in officiating than running could get an early start assisting the certified officials at MAC meets. Tracy conducted track meets all over the Newport metropolitan area and beyond. Princeton, Yale, West Point, Syracuse, and facilities not previously used by any organization like USATF or TAC. He added high school divisions to the weekly MAC meets and created new event management systems to make his meets more portable from place to place. He used to call it track meet in a box. He engaged the use of a coach bus to bring athletes and officials to these distant venues if they did not have transportation. In concert with the New York Amateur Sports Alliance, the MAC, under Tracy's leadership, created and conducted in-school, elementary and high school, junior high school programs for several New York City school districts. The MAC grew to conduct over 70 events and programs eventually under Tracy's leadership. Tracy was responsible for the design, management, promotion, fundraising, and general administration of all the programs for the entire region. During this time, he also turned the MAC into a direct youth service organization which provided supplementary educational, health, and social programs to thousands of participants, using running as the hook to get them involved. Membership rose 130% to over 15,500 from 1982 to 1997. That was 1/6 of the entire national membership. The budget grew 22-fold to over 1,700,000, both far and away the largest of any association then or since. Tracy was the first person in TAC USATF to actively raise money in the foundation, not-for-profit community, and from government entities. Upon leaving MAC in the fall of 1997, the MAC had some 25 foundation grants totaling close to $600,000 annually, as well as another $600,000 in New York City and New York State grants to fund its various programs. Tracy created the National Scholastic Indoor Track and Field Championships. This meet significantly changed the face of high school track and field. It was the first true national track and field championship for high school age athletes. Other national high school championship events currently sponsored by Nike, the Nike Cross Country Meet, and New Balance, their indoor nationals and outdoor, and with which he has stayed involved with through the National Scholastic Athletics Foundation, which he co-founded and is still a board member. It all grew from that event, the Pathmark National Scholastic. If you have it, we will host it, became the mantra of the MAC. Tracy led the effort to bring the following TAC USATF National Championships to the New York area and then skillfully conducted them. We had the Masters Outdoor Track and Field Championships, the Youth Athletics Track and Field Championships, the Junior, Senior, and Masters Cross Country Championships. We did that twice, and they were the first to provide prize money. And memorably, the 1990 Men's and Women's Outdoor Track and Field Championships at Downing Stadium on Randall's Island, which featured a world record 100-meter dash by Leroy Burrell and a stunning long jump competition between Carl Lewis and Mike Powell, where they traded the lead in 1 centimeter segments. That seems like yesterday, but that's 30 years ago, folks.
Yeah.
Tracy secured the opportunity and then coordinated and arranged the funding for women's exhibition 400-meter hurdles and 10,000-meter race at the 1980 U.S. Olympic trials, and a women's exhibition 10-kilometer race walk at the 84 trials as part of an effort to have these events receive national and international exposure and acceptance into championship events and ultimately the Olympic Games. That all eventually happened. At TAC USA's request, Tracy led the effort to bring the 1987 IAAF Race Walking World Cup to the United States, and then served as the chairman of the organizing committee and race director of the event. This was a watershed moment for that sport, and it was the first time the event had been held outside of Europe. And it was the first time the entries weren't limited and that all countries were welcome to participate. While doing all this, he still found the time to stay engaged in coaching and the athlete representation with the Warren Street Social and Athletic Club. This is what he did while here in New York. We all know of his many accomplishments since then, but especially notable was his contribution as the head men's team manager for Team USA from 2008 to 2018, including 3 World Championships, 2 Pan American Championships, several North American, Caribbean, Central American, Caribbean Championships, and the 2008-2016 Olympic Games in Beijing and Rio de Janeiro. Having some occasional involvement in international track and field championships myself, it was always very comforting to bump into Tracy in faraway places like Istanbul and Beijing. While I may have been starting races for the IAAF, seeing Tracy always made me remember where I guess got my best formative experience in learning that job. Right here in New York, working at Tracy's Marathon MAC meets. There were literally hundreds of great Tracy stories to share. I especially remember the Syracuse conference call. Mario, Bruce, Tracy, and the Chancellor. but we have some time constraints here, so let's cut to the chase. Tracy Sundlun, it is indeed our great honor to welcome you into our USATF New York Officials Hall of Fame. Although a Southern California may claim you now, to we all here, you're still a New Yorker through and through. Thank you for all you have given us, Tracy.
Been a great ride.
Wow. Wow.
Congratulations, Tracy.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for such a generous introduction, Tom. And of course, you've taken half of what I was going to say.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. I might have to tell a new story, though. Seriously, words cannot really express properly what an honor it is to be inducted into the USATF New York Officials Hall of Fame. This is where my career in event management really all started. And to join the amazing men and women already in the hall, as well as my fellow inductees this year, literally brings tears to my eyes, because every one of them was so critical to my time in New York and the success and enjoyment that we, me and everyone else involved with the Metropolitan Athletics Congress, then had in putting on meets and creating programs for literally thousands of boys and girls and men and women of all ages and abilities from all over the New York metropolitan area, virtually every week from 1982 to 1997. Hearing or reading the names of every one of them: Frank Bailey, Willie Black Jr., Marvin Johnson, Jacob Korn, Sue Polanski, Helio and Pat Rico, Warren Ring, Adam Sanford, Lou Vasquez Jr., Fred Adler, Leon Bailey, Joe Caruso, Stella Cashman, Brent Lee, Dick Mann, Mary Onken, Alan Steinfeld.
I also got an email from them.
Oh.
So I'll remember that next time.
Margaret Cornelius, John Gibson, Neal Johnson, and Gary Westerfield elicits a smile, a personal thank you, a special memory, and a story. I am truly lucky, thrilled, and honored to be included in this group. And when I say lucky, I really mean it. I don't think anyone attending here today was there, but my relationship with our officials association group got off to a very rocky start. I had just been selected, whatever, the association's women's track and field chairperson. Thank you, Elizabeth Phillips. And that is a story for another day in its own right. And as such, was in charge of putting on the association's few meets. I went to my first meet at the Armory, the very old Armory, and I'm watching Frank Bailey and his team time the dash. And they're only timing the first three. I said, Frank, what about the others? Everyone paid an entry fee. He said, look up there. They're coaches. They timed them from the stands. But that's not right, I said. That's the way we do it. And that's the way we've always done it. And that's the way we're going to do it. He responded, not on my watch, I said. We went back and forth a bit more with no progress. And then I fired them all on the spot. I told Frank and all the officials there that if they weren't going to do it my way, we didn't need them anymore. And when they wanted to do it my way, they were welcome back. I'm not sure if I was swearing, but I am sure I was a bit loud. And then I got on the mic and announced what had transpired, invited all the coaches down to be our officials. And the meet continued. A couple of weeks later, Frank and the rest of the officials were back and doing it my way. And 39 years later, I'm being inducted into your Hall of Fame. On the brighter side, it was just noted that I was the one that first paid our TAC USATF officials for our association meets, even if I was a bit on the cheap side, and created a junior officials program, which produced Lloyd Cornelius, among others. My time in New York with you and the Metropolitan Athletics Congress was remarkable in so many ways. Not only did I meet my first and second wife, Isabel Carmichael and Marissa DeLuna, and be blessed with my only daughter, Felicity, then known as Fifi, who still lives in New York with her husband, Eric, and was blessed to coach a whole lot of remarkable distance runners with the Warren Street Social and Athletic Club. But I was able to work with a special group of people to build the Metropolitan Athletics Congress into one of the country's premier running organizations. Our mission, mandate, and/or goal, whatever you want to call it, was to provide every one of our participants each and every opportunity in and through our sport that their mind and/or body needed or wanted. And part of that responsibility was to make sure that every athlete of every age and ability could participate in their event somewhere in our region every weekend of the season. And if there wasn't an event for some age group or event being put on by another organization, then it was up to us to put on a meet to accommodate them. As Tom just said, we also refashioned the MAC to be more than a local governing body of the sport, to be the chief service organization within and focused on our sport regionally. And yes, when I left in the fall of 1997 to come to California to create the Rock and Roll Marathon Series, the MAC, you guys, were putting on some 70 events a year in facilities all over the region. Yes, with a staff of 9 and membership over 15,500 and a budget of 1.7 million with 25 foundation grants and New York City Department of Youth Service and New York State funding. We're funding after-school programs and college placement efforts, and it helped the New York City Department of Parks and the region as a whole build or refurbish those 13 tracks and cross-country facilities. We brought 7 national and world track and field, cross-country and race walking championships to the area. Of course, that's in addition to the USA Mobile Indoor Championships in the Garden, which were there well before me. And yeah, we created the National Scholastic Indoor Track and Field Championships in 1984, which has grown and continued to thrive for the last 37 years under a variety of different names and sponsors. At my age, I learned something new every day that I knew yesterday. And I'm sure that I will leave someone's name out. And for that, I apologize. But I'm accepting this award and honor on behalf of all those who made it possible, who shared my vision, added detail and order to my dreams, propped me up, and cleaned up after me. My MAC officers, committee chairs, and Never Say Die supporters, including, in addition to some of the officials already mentioned, Elizabeth Gaynor, Rick Pasquarella, Phil Greenwald, Dr. Louis Maharam, Dr. Stephen Pearl, Alan Steinfeld, Jimmy Ryan, Dorothy Clinton, Bob Hirsch, Jim Spear, Mike Burns, Joy Kamani, Barbara Paddock, Fred Lebo, Paul Limmer, and Peter Maniscalco. But most of all, my staff, who shared my unrestrained passion for and commitment to both our sport and our athletes. The Ian Brooks, Louise Bass, Jimmy Agoe, Donadale Arthur, Ali Mongo Mongo, Khalid Kanucci, yes, the marathon champion, Inez McLean McMahon, Marissa DeLuna, Goran Milanovic, Craig McDonald, Edna Salimitic, Jacob Korn, Rochelle Clinton, Robert Taylor, Jerry Erasmi, Yahong, Gudrun Phillips, and Jane Biondo. In closing, I've never worked a day in my life. My avocation became my occupation. I've always been able to do something I love and I'm passionate about with people I like. That is and was award enough. But today is a delicious cherry on top of the sundae. Thank you so very, very much for this honor. Every Metropolitan Athletics Congress official, now USATF New York official, has been a part of my life. my journey. I am blessed. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Congratulations. Yay.
You're here.
All right. Our last inductee today, Gary Westerfield. Gary Westerfield of Smithtown, New York, has been involved in athletics since high school. As a runner at Smithtown Central High School, and later on at State University of New York, Brockport. While in graduate school, he became a race walker and quickly reached national class, winning the Coney Island Race Walk in 1968. Drafted into the U.S. Army in 1970, much of his time was spent on the Army track and field team. During his tour of duty, he competed in the World Military Championships, the CISM, as well as the Pan Am team trials, where he had a third place finish in 4 hours and 21 minutes. Gary taught high school social studies for the Smithtown School District from 1969 to his retirement in 2000. During that career, he coached the Smithtown High School team to the Suffolk County Championships in the late 1990s, and he also had a stint coaching at Stony Brook University in the early 1980s, winning the first ECAC Division III cross-country championship in 1984. While at Stony Brook, he developed a stable of race walkers that were among the best in the country. In 1986, Gary became an international race walk judge and a certified track and field official. His first international judging assignment was in 1991 as a chief judge at the San Jose World Race Walking Cup. His international judging assignments took him to approximately 20 countries from 1986 to 2016, when the IAAF mandatory age restriction kicked in. I know all about that, Gary. Highlights included officiating the World Track and Field Championships in Gothenburg, Sweden, and Berlin, the World Cup in France, the Youth Olympics in Singapore, and the 2000 Olympic Games in Beijing. Gary has served as a race walk lecturer for the IAAF, now World Athletics, in the North America, Central America, Caribbean area. His expertise in race walking has resulted in various publications and international presentations. His short video, Teaching Race Walking, remains a very useful tool for teaching the event to youth athletes. His Walk USA team and its star, two-time Olympian Maria Mishtakofi, continues to develop national class race walkers from its base in Long Island. Gary has hosted race walk competitions in Long Island since the mid-1970s, including numerous national championships, as well as developmental events. Gary has served as the Metropolitan Association Race Walk Chair, as well as the Long Island Association Race Walk Chair. Gary helped plan with Tracy Sundlun the World Cup in race walking that was held in New York City in 1987, at which he was also the head coach of Team USA. Gary was the Long Island Association's second president and is now that association's treasurer, as well as being the race walk chair. In 2013, Gary received the prestigious Robert Giggengack Award from USA Track and Field. He has also received the National Officials Association Laurie Maynard Award in race walking, USA Race Walking's Ron Zinn Award, and New York State's Outstanding Track Officials Award. He was inducted into the USA Track and Field National Officials Hall of Fame in 2013. Gary is not just a race walk judge. He's been a New York State Scholastic track official since 2000, working many track meets in a wide range of events, ranging from starter to clerk, all field events, umpire and referee, meet director, and judge timer. He officiates USATF meets whenever possible. Gary is also an international road course measurer and has certified more than 350 running courses since his retirement from teaching. He works at over 100 track and field meets a year. And his wife is known to say that Gary never retired. He just switched careers. I want to welcome into our Hall of Fame, Gary Westerfield. Yay.
Hey.
Gary, the floor is all yours.
Tom, thank you very much for going over my resume. I've forgotten many of those things. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I've been around a long time. And I remember what it was like working as the race walk chair in the Metropolitan Association. This is long before Long Island decided to secede from MAC. And I must, for the record, state that I had nothing to do with that. I didn't get involved with the Long Island track and field until the year after Long Island became a separate member. But when I was a race walk chair, we had these large meetings in New York City because Tracy said we had to have official meetings. And we just paid respect to what Tracy wanted us to do. And I remember one story when New York was thinking that, well, maybe we should have a paid executive director. And that's what Tracy ended up becoming. But the Athletics Congress was headed by an executive director, Olin Castle, who said, I'm the executive director. You can't have an executive director. So Tracy said, okay, then I'll take the title of the Grand Olan. And at that point, Olin Castle said, okay, you can call him the executive director. It's stories like that give me memories of the experiences I've had. When I was a judge at most metropolitan race walking competitions, I was also a coach. And people said, okay, he's unbiased because he has given his wives red cards in races, so we can trust his opinion. And my wife, Nadia Dimitrov, who's sitting there, she received a red card, so did the others. But then they straightened up and had great technique. And as a coach, it was wonderful to have my athletes compete against Howie's athletes in the New York Walkers Club and Stella's athletes from Park Race Walking. It's been a joy to have these memories. Now, I've been speaking probably now for about 5 minutes, which is 5 minutes longer than I spoke after I received a Giegengach Award at the Athletics Congress, the Athletics Congress? No, I guess the Athletics Congress in 2011. I was so shocked to receive that award, and I walked up on a stage, and there's this bright light at me staring in my face, and I couldn't even see the audience, and I stammered a couple of words and said, thank you. So I'm going to be like Gary Westerfield in 2011 and say thank you. It's a great honor to be recognized by New York, and I hope I can continue to, once we get out of this pandemic, and continue to do my work as an official and as a course measurer. So thanks again. And Lloyd, thank you for all you've done to get this program going. I'm done now.
Thank you, Gary. And hopefully we get that World Cup back in New York someday.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
First of all, I want to congratulate all our inductees, and I want to thank you very much for joining us all today, folks. This is a great thing, and I wish we could have done it in person, but the reality is we do with what we can. And boy, has, you know, the old expression, when you get lemons, make lemonade, that's been true of track and field this year. We have done amazing things with not much of an opportunity, and I'm very happy. Okay, so
Tom, great job. Great job, Tom.
Thank you. Please don't forget, visit the New York Officials Hall of Fame at the website you see on the screen right there, newyork.usatf.org/officialshof. And thank you for joining us today. And God bless you all. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you for organizing this. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Did a great job
Thank you,
as
Tom.
usual.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Tom.
Thanks,
Thank
Lloyd.
you from Colorado.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
thanks to the committee,
Thank you,
Tom.
Lloyd. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, my friends.
Be safe, everyone. Ciao.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Lloyd.
Well
Thank you
done.
all.
Hello, friends.
Good job, everybody.
Hey, thank you again.
Thank you,
Goodbye.
Tom.
See you later,
Lloyd, and
everyone.
everybody.
Thanks, Sue.
Okay, be
Virtual
safe.
Congratulations to the
Bye.
everybody who has received the award.
Bye.
Thanks.
Congratulations
Stay
to safe and everyone, healthy. Lloyd and your mother and whoever I forgot. Everyone above.
Thank you.